Welcome back to the Altars and Ashes podcast, where we believe the Lord's kingdom still advances, the fire still burns, and God is rebuilding his people through households of faith. I'm Brent Darius Fleming.
I'm Austin Tucker.
And I'm Robbie Stringer.
And today we're going to talk about a comprehensive view of education. Isn't that right? Sure. What do you think? Should we talk about education?
Nah.
No. Okay. Plans have changed. No, I'm sitting here with two seasoned veterans in the education field. So I'm just going to turn it over to you guys and just allow you to talk for hours upon hours about education.
Honestly, I would say Robbie's more seasoned than me on that.
Okay, Robbie, this is just you then.
He's spent more
Just a monologue. I'm just going to monologue the whole time.
He's just a natural teacher.
He is a natural teacher.
The majority of my educational background has been mostly administration. I spent really 3 years in the classroom out of all almost 20 years of doing that.
And do you like administration?
No, I don't like administration. I administrate because of calling and necessity. But I have been praying for years that God gives me natural administrators, people with the gift of administrations.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got Mr. Files, our principal that we hired at school, man has it, especially on the book side. Now we've got a new elder at our church, and he already's calling himself bishop once, but he's got that administration gift. I administrate out of necessity. And honestly,
I like how you're using administrate as a verb. I don't hear it as a verb very often.
Really?
I administrate.
No, actually, your dad used to say that
he's pointing at me, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Robbie's dad used to say he administrated out of calling and necessity. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I got it from, because it's like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a verb. I'm just saying I don't hear it very often.
That's me
in that.
too. I administrate out of necessity.
And I am also not administrator. And that's kind of what I was thinking about when I asked that question, is that, finding your calling is an important thing. And I love teaching.
Well, I've been in education a long time too, because I went to public school and I was taught for years.
So then you had to unlearn.
So I was in education. They were teaching me.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be
funny. 13 years.
It was supposed to be funny. It didn't land.
13 years.
No, and then we homeschool our girls, so we do a little bit on that side. So it's interesting because we do all have unique perspectives here.
This is actually interesting, though, because coming up in public education,
Am I the only one? You guys were both.
Yeah,
I'm private Christian, right?
I'm private
for the most part. Well, actually, I mean, I was in public school in kindergarten and first grade.
Yeah,
and then I was I was in a Christian school for a year. And then I was homeschooled for several years, and then I went to a Christian school from fifth grade up until graduation.
I think that our listeners can probably tell I'm the only one homeschool or the only one public school. I mean,
I doubt that. I definitely sound the most public schooled. But I was in public school, kindergarten through fourth grade.
Yeah. Okay.
And then private
just
school.
The most formative years.
My most formative years.
Right.
And then private school, and then begged to go to the public high school, spent some time at public high school 1 year, and went, I want to go back.
This is not what I thought it was.
No, it wasn't near as cool as I thought it would be.
The grass is always greener.
Oh, you know the old adage, if it's greener, it's probably because it's on top of a septic tank.
There you go.
And that's about the truth.
An old adage.
Yeah.
Not one I've heard.
And also true.
Yeah, it is true.
And it's an adage.
Okay. So, listen, originally we had planned on doing multiple episodes on education, right? But the more we started to work through it, the clearer it became that this is really just one conversation that needs depth, not just fragmentation like we did sort of with the marriage and things like that. So, tonight we're going to be talking about, the deeper questions like what is education? Who is responsible for it? We touched on that with the different spheres earlier, a couple episodes ago, but we'll touch on it again. And then we're going to talk about what is education meant to produce, because ultimately Christian education is not about schooling, right? It's about discipleship. It's about the household and the formation thereof. And so if we believe the household is the front line of the Christian civilization, which we do, then education is one of the primary supply lines, and whoever controls formation controls the future. So I think segment one, what we want to talk about is the fact that education is never neutral.
No.
And so when we send our kids to public school, we assume that they are getting a neutral education, right? Like there's, no bias. We're just learning facts, dates, math, stuff like that. There's no bias, is there?
Well, that's the genius of the lie. That's the genius of the lie, because I think people have bought into that. People think that things can be done in neutrality. And education of all things is one of the things that cannot at all be done in neutrality.
That's right.
I was getting ready to say, especially like earlier, how much history did you learn in public school that you've gone and reread now and went, whoa?
Yeah, quite a bit. And, here's part of the problem is that I only really learned about American history. Nowadays, the way that they teach it in public schools is like, if you want to learn about Western Civ and, world, geography and history and stuff like that, you got to go take a class in college for that. And it's like, in reality, how can you really understand American history if you hadn't studied the greater?
It's like Ron Swanson said.
That's my favorite character.
History began in 1776. Everything before that was a mistake.
That's true. It's true. It is my favorite character of all time. By the way, did you know they call me Ron in their household? They think that I'm just Ron Swanson.
They call you Ron. Y'all call him
That's
Ron?
what he's told me before.
What's that?
Or Anna has one of the two.
No,
awesome.
she said that he reminds.
Which is the best compliment I could ever get.
I
honestly.
like Ron.
Yeah.
I like Ron.
I'll take it. But you're right. Education is never neutral. Let's do some Bible verses, and then we'll come to you, Dr. Stringer, if that's okay.
That's his dad.
So, yeah. Oh, whoops. Yep. All right. So I'm going to read Deuteronomy 6:4-9. And of course, this is the great Shema, right? So, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your home, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them in the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay. We've got Proverbs 1:7. Who wants to read
that? It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom and instruction.
And I'll read Ephesians 6:4 here, which says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord.
Amen. I'm reminded here of Abraham Kuyper's quote, which we've only said like the first 30 times. Yeah.
That would make a good drinking game every time we say that quote. Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about drinking milk, taking shots of
milk. Yeah.
Robbie's our teetotaler over here. So
there's not a square inch in the whole of dominion of human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine.
Yeah.
So the idea of that, of quoting that in this context, is to say that education also belongs to God. And the verses that we read, the first one we read in Deuteronomy gives an instruction to parents to teach their children about the laws of God. And then we saw in Proverbs about how the beginning of knowledge is to fear the Lord. And then we also talked about how parents are told to bring up children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And so we're to teach them about God. Now, what that may come out to some people, and if you're listening to this podcast, you might just be a Christian and teaching about God just comes natural because that's what you've always heard. But to many people outside of the church that have been raised in what is called a secular education, secular meaning not religious, is that, that's brainwashing.
Yeah.
If you tell children, about God and you're trying to instill that in them, that's brainwashing, and we don't want that. And so what we need to do is we need to put people in a neutral space and to give people an education that is without any bias or from any particular perspective that's truly neutral. And that is, in theory, what you get in public school education.
Well, and so here it is, and you see it in all the movies. We're not really pushing a religion on Johnny or Susie.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to let them pick when they grow up. Mm-hmm. And so then they put them in and it's funny because that's the thing. It's not neutral. Neutral education says there's no God. That's a worldview. And if there's no God, you have no value. If you're stardust, there's no purpose for your existence. There's nothing neutral about it.
Right.
And so that's one argument.
That is cosmology is what that is.
Yeah, and anthropology.
Right, yeah, true.
I mean, you're saying your value is whatever you bring to the world because you're nothing but stardust.
You know what's so funny, though? I'm sitting here, Robbie, as you were talking, I was like, what if we actually really believed that education should be totally neutral? And everybody, when they taught on World War II, didn't say anything about Hitler in the negative, right? You know, no negative talk about Stalin, no nothing. It's just pure facts, right?
Yeah, they both have their look. The Nazis had their particular view,
right?
You know, the British and Americans and French, they had their own particular
and neither
view.
was wrong. You know, they just had differing opinions, really.
I want to hear both sides,
right?
And I will affirm both sides.
Right.
And nobody's going to do that. And it's interesting. Brent, is that your name today?
How dare you,
Brent? Yes, Brent. Brent, I actually was already planning on bringing that exact thing up. That, you know, when people talk about Nazis, it's not neutral.
Does that scare you that we were on the same wavelength?
Bit.
Yeah,
a little bit. I was also going to say, you know, earlier than that, you're talking about American history. You know, when you start getting into the first half of the 1800s, once you get out of the two wars we had with Britain, you're going to have to start talking about slavery.
Yeah.
And how many public schools in America, their textbooks are designed to talk about American slavery in a neutral way?
Yeah. Well, 100%, because education is neutral.
Well, no,
right.
But I mean, would anybody really want that?
No, right.
What Robbie is saying is that he has a positive view on slavery.
And I also heard that he likes Hitler.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
No.
If you clip just the certain part, I heard that.
Yeah. No, obvious. No, I am not. Hitler's not.
Take a stand for us.
Hitler was bad. I don't care what Austin says.
Yeah.
Hitler is bad. But, you know, when it comes to things like that, you know, everything's going to be taught from a particular view.
Yeah.
Even if, you know, you don't have a professor saying Hitler's bad, you're probably going to catch that from the way that they're talking about it, right? And so that's going to be true of a lot of different things. And so the particular view, even if you think you're being neutral, what you choose to bring up. For instance, Brent, you were talking earlier about how, you know, a lot of education now, it does talk about American history, but it leaves the greater context of the rest of Western civilization.
Yeah, right.
Now, you may not have a teacher who comes out and says Western civilization is important, but when you don't talk about it, that is what you're conveying.
Yeah.
Well, and Christian education versus public school education. So when I went to junior high and ended up in Christian school, I'll never forget my shock and amazement when I found out that Thanksgiving was not founded by a bunch of pilgrims and Indians eating together. That it, in fact, was a presidential proclamation that happened on two different occasions. And then, was it Abraham made it an official, or wasn't it Lincoln?
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. Lincoln makes it an official holiday. Washington called for a day of prayer and supplication around November time also. But it was always religious. That in fact did historically happen, that there was a meal, but it has nothing to do with why we celebrate Thanksgiving. But it's amazing, in order to be neutral, the state schools, they don't want to bring God into the picture. And so they get rid of the true history. They remove the proclamation by Lincoln, which is all about the Lord. We published a thing on Dust and Glory on that. And they neutralize it by actually neutering our history.
Well, I unfortunately think that, and history and the Bible are like my favorite subjects. My reading that I love to read, and I go back and forth between theology, Bible type stuff, and history and politics and such things. And the thing about history is that a lot of times when people teach history, everybody has an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they do is they teach selectively. The things that are inconvenient to their worldview, they just don't talk about. And when you selectively pick and choose like that, you're not really teaching people. You know, you're giving people a perspective. And hey, a perspective is fine, because that's what we're saying, is that there is no such thing as neutral. But when you say something's neutral and it's really not, then you are really just manipulating people, whether you intend to or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's solid. So one of the things that I put on here is that every educational system has to answer fundamental questions, right? Who is God? What is man? What is truth? And what is the good life? Those are things that inevitably will come out, even if they don't necessarily intend to. Like Austin, you were talking about, I don't even remember what the example was of whether we came from fish or whether it was monkeys or whatever. Like whenever they start talking about, natural selection and different things like that, they are framing that argument, and they don't know that they're doing anthropology in a sense. I mean, maybe they do, right? But maybe they don't. But inevitably, they're defining who God is.
Yeah.
And so either they're going to define it the way the Bible does, or they're not. And so if Christ is not Lord over education, then someone else is. And unfortunately, secularism is sort of the recipe of the day, and it, the absence of religion. But in reality, it's actually a rival to religion.
It's a religion in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do have that in here. We'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
You're right.
here's, and the illustration is, if you believe in a Big Bang,
Mm-hmm.
before the Big Bang, there was no time, no space, no matter. And they teach that in their own position. So there was dark energy, or energy we still don't really know exists, we think exists, and that energy conversed, it exploded, and it made everything you see, hear, and touch. And eventually, after millions of years, we came out of this primordial ooze, and we have breath and life, and we are a cosmic mistake, and that everything is heading towards entropy. Everything is decaying from here forward, which would go against the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
That's a religion.
Mm-hmm.
So you come from nothing with no purpose, and you die and leave this earth and go to nothing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. The Christian worldview is, before anything, before time, space, and matter, God.
Yeah.
And all things were made for his purpose, for his glory. We were formed by his image to take dominion, to glorify him. So now we have a purpose. And then when we die, we go be present with God. It's a religion, and it's a rival religion to Christianity.
Well, and we talked about this. I'm going to let you say it, Robbie, but we talked about this in the previous podcast that we did, and we talked about how, well, I'll tell you what, since we can't really link to it, I'm going to find it. You go ahead and say what you're going to say, and then I'll come back to it.
Well, what I was going to say is that means that every school system is a religious school system.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
So a Catholic school teaches things from a Catholic perspective.
Yep.
A Protestant Christian school teaches things from a Protestant perspective. And a public school teaches things from a atheistic / agnostic perspective. And things will make a lot more sense when you just realize that is the case.
Yeah.
And so when you're choosing a school, you're just choosing the one.
So
you're
it's
choosing
almost
what
like
perspective
the
you're gonna come
adjective
from.
beforehand tells you what religion. It's either a Christian or it's a secular, in a sense, right? Like the secular
I mean, you
is
theoretically could have a Islamic school, and
Right,
you could have a
right,
Buddhist school.
right.
So it doesn't have to be those, but in our society, it's usually
Yeah,
going to be one
yeah.
of those two.
But I'm using that as an example, as like the adjective before the school kind of tells you what the frame of mind is. Okay, so when we said in the previous one, what is talking about it as a rival religion, we talked about how it has its own doctrine, just like a religion does. It's progressivism. It has its own rituals, like pride parades and DEI trainings. It has its own liturgy. And we talked about, streaming, shopping, scrolling, its own high priests, like influencers and different educators and bureaucrats. It has sacraments. In our modern society, we're talking abortion, things like that. It has its own blasphemy laws. If you try to misgender somebody, you'll find out really quickly that there are blasphemy laws. And it has its own evangelists, even, which are, content creators. And so the whole point was there just that, secularism, not even just in the education sphere, but secularism is a rival religion. It's not just neutral. It's not just nothing. It is a religion of its own.
I think right now is a good time to point out to the parents, Deuteronomy 6, you read it. The Bible is not saying you might want to. It says you shall teach them diligent to your children and talk to them. So the Bible only ever calls the parent to see to the education of the student, of the child. It is not to be relegated to anybody else. And I would say this, parents, even if your kids are going to a Christian school, look at the curriculum, ask questions. The Christian school is not to replace you. It is your responsibility to see to the education.
Even if the curriculum is the best there ever was, it's still your job in the first place, because ultimately education is catechesis, right? And so the only question is which God is doing the catechizing.
Amen, 100%. And so let me ask. I'm going to throw a question out there for you, brothers. The X exploded with the whole argument: is it a sin for a Christian to send their kids to a public school?
Right.
What do you think?
Can I ask a question about this question before we answer?
Define your term.
Are we talking about the concept of public school, or are we talking about the way public schools are constituted in the United States in 2025?
I think, well,
does that make your answer different?
Yes.
If so, then maybe explain it.
Well, I don't have a problem in general with the idea of public school.
Right.
Okay. So saying, education is a really important thing.
It's a public good, essentially.
It's a public good. We want everybody to have it because I want the rest of the country to be educated.
Right.
Even people who might not be able to afford to go to a school. Because, especially if you're going to be in a society where everybody gets to vote, I mean, it's scary having a society where a lot of people are deeply uneducated and they have the ability to go to the ballot box and choose
you're making an argument for not allowing everybody to vote. Only landowners. That's what you're saying. You're making an argument to not let everybody vote.
There was a time when only landowners could,
right?
And honestly, those were the only people who were educated.
Right,
but
exactly.
See, I don't think education makes for good decisions, though.
Not necessarily. Well, I mean, it depends on the type of education you're getting.
Exactly.
But I'm just starting with the idea that the idea that you say, people need an education, and so we're going to pool the community's money together and ensure that everybody has a good education, because you can find that being promoted way back. Martin Luther promoted the civil society around him.
Aristotle argued that the reason why crimes happen in a society is because the people are uneducated.
Well, that's not entirely true, because you can take evil people, give them a lot of intelligence, and then they're just smart evil people.
Yeah, they make more evil because of their intelligence.
Who was it? It was one of the reformers said, if you educate a sinner, you get a smarter sinner.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what you get. Yeah. So I agree. I agree that there needs to be an education, but I don't think that it's to make a educated voter base per se.
Well, no. I'm just saying that's one of many reasons that I think it's a public good. And as I was saying, Martin Luther made the case. Look to when he was in Germany, saying we have a very uneducated population.
Yeah, he did.
And then he asked the civil society, the civil government, provide education for everybody. In fact, he even promoted education of girls, which was very uncommon in his.
Right.
When you get to the Puritans in Massachusetts, they passed the Old Deluder Satan Act that they said that Satan was going to try to deceive our youth. And the only way to make sure that they do not follow the deception of the devil is to be able to read the scriptures.
But see, in that concept, you had a state constitution with a state church, and the education program was for the purpose of teaching a population to read the Bible. And so that's not really a neutral public education like we.
Well, he didn't say neutral, though.
I didn't say it should be neutral.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So I'm just we associate public with a supposedly neutral.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think that's the way as public schools were founded in our country. I don't think that's the way that they were originally conceived.
Okay.
So that's why I said the question does depend on what you mean. If you had a primarily Christian society electing Christian leaders, and in their local community, they're putting Christian influenced textbooks, Christian influenced teachers, I have no problem with that. Now, in 2025 in the United States, we do not have that.
Yeah, right. No doubt.
No, in fact, we have as Brian always says, we have a catechizing to the opposing of Christianity.
Yeah. I mean, here's the bottom line. Education always formed love, right? It forms loves, not just intellect. And so neutrality is not even actually possible.
No.
As much as we would want it to be, it's not possible. Now, you can form allegiances, certainly, but whoever disciples children Monday through Friday is going to shape
the passions,
and it's going to be way more than you get on Sunday morning.
That in that old really great podcast back in the day.
I know
we spent a lot of time talking about.
It was great.
It was awesome.
That's why you wanted to join it.
That we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that true education is to form passions.
That's right.
And what passions are they forming?
So going back to your question.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I'm trying to think about it because I saw this a little bit and I did.
Was there someone specific that said something about that?
Doug Wilson. During
okay.
No Quarter November.
Mm-hmm. And he got a lot of pushback on it.
So let me just say my initial thoughts and then you guys can push back on me.
I plan on it. I don't even know what you're going to say, but
I hesitate to say that it's a sin. I don't think it's particularly wise if you have another option. Okay, I send my kids to a Christian school. If I could not send my kids to a Christian school, I would be doing everything that I could to ensure that my wife could homeschool them. The modern public school system that we have would be an absolute last option for me. However, when I look at other families that might do something different than me, I hesitate to hold myself above them and judge them as being sinners.
So
I would say unwise. I would definitely call them to kind of look at this and rethink and say, if you have an option, I'd definitely say maybe you really want to reconsider this.
I would agree with your statement wholeheartely, except for a little
Good,
bit,
let's move on.
Except for a little bit more harsh. My attitude would be, if there's no other option, like we have people in our church who are in court battles and they have to go to public because of orders.
Right.
We have other people who we've had, but in our school, in our church members get first priority. And so
also in the state of Florida,
it's covered.
Yeah.
And so in my opinion, in our circumstance, if you can do Christians and a Christian education and you're just choosing not to, it's definitely a sin because you're sinning against your children, really.
Here's what I would say. So a sin in one definition is failing to do what God commands, right? And we saw that God commands us to educate our children. Now, with that said, if you're in a situation where you can't send them to a private school, and even you can't homeschool because you now need the two incomes, what I would say is, if you are sending them to a public school, you better be doing all the catechizing and reading the Bible and family worship that you can, because if you're not doing that, if you're just waiting for Sunday morning for them to go and sit through kids' church or something like that, I promise you it's not going to work.
Well, just the hours alone.
Yeah.
Because if they're in church a couple hours on Sunday, and maybe one on Wednesday night or something like that, I mean, you're talking about 2, 3, 4 hours. That's not even one day.
Not even half of a day. Honestly, most kids are at church in an actual teaching environment at church for 40 minutes to an hour, maybe. Right. And if they go to 2 services, maybe 75 minutes or something like that. And, you got 8 hours at school, Monday through Friday. So I would just say I don't know that it's a sin. I mean, first of all, Douglas Wilson said it because it was No Quarter November.
Yeah.
So it's the Overton window, trying to shift the Overton window. So you say something out here on the edge, knowing people are going to push back, and you actually bring the argument over here.
You guys are bigger fans of him than I am. Would you say that he's the type of person who sometimes would say things in just a very provocative way just to get a conversation started?
Yes, absolutely. But it's not out of nowhere. It is to get the conversation started.
He is that way, but luckily, me and BD over here, we're not like that at all.
No,
so,
we don't.
Yeah,
we don't provoke anything. We don't provoke. Just beautiful souls, really, is what we are. No, so I think that it can be sinful if you are not doing your job that God gave you. If you are doing everything to the best of your ability, you're catechizing, you're teaching, you're reading the Bible with them, you're listening to, hymns and psalms and things like that, and you're paying attention to what is going into their mind from their cell phone, from the music they're listening to, from the books they're reading, Like, I guess what I'm saying is you better be 10 times more vigilant than a parent that has their kids in a Christian
Well,
school.
I'll say this. If your excuse for sending your kids to public school is, well, my kids are missionaries.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Then we've got a problem.
Yep, I agree with that 100%.
Because, I mean, that's like, do you send your children into war?
No.
I mean, that's a stupid statement.
So you're against sharing the gospel in public school. That's what you're saying.
I'm all for, and that's, I'm getting ready to say something that's a little different. If you have a high schooler who is solid in they come from a good home and there's a reason why they need to go public, like there's a specialty program or something. I've seen that, like, because Florida has like the ACE program for medical.
Yeah,
and like we had one young lady who, you know, she was a strong Christian, came from a good home, went to a good Reformed church, and her faith didn't get shooken, but she was able to go into that medical dual enrollment program that the public school offers here that we can't offer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have somebody like that sharing the gospel, yes. But honestly, my junior higher trying to argue with the philosophies, and they're just going to twist their mind. I'm not putting them underneath
and
that.
they're just going to get a bad score on their test, and so they're just like, you know, it's not worth it. I'll just say what I need to say or whatever. Ultimately, here's what I think we're all trying to say. When families outsource formation, they should not be surprised if their children adopt the values of whoever is forming them.
And that word formation is kind of where all this is coming from, is that because it's not neutral, it's not just a bunch of facts, all teaching forms someone into something.
Yeah, that's right.
Shapes them. That is ultimately part of what we're, talking about here is...
Are you comfortable now?
I felt like I was all crammed up in a corner, and I looked, and there was a folding table in the corner. I'm like, why don't I
just get up in the middle of the podcast?
Just make all kinds of noise. Yeah.
Yeah. I should leave that in there.
Yeah.
Good. But, that's what we're looking at as we were talking about, as formation. Our children, as they grow up, are going to be formed into something.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just the school that's forming them, right? It's screens. I mean, it could be the institutions that they're at, but also there's peer culture too.
Well, and there's a culture in the institution, right?
Let me just say this. So before we even started, you were talking about how the other day during announcements, I said something about 6 and 7, like I was saying the announcements or whatever.
6, 7.
And you said all the kids immediately started doing that. That's peer culture, right?
Right.
And so nobody has any clue what that means, apparently, but they were all excited about it or whatever. So it's like they're going to do whatever their peers are doing.
Is downright Ohio skibbity toilet.
Okay.
My wife teaches junior high.
Do you know what that
means? I've heard the phrase, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Toilet. Okay. I'm lost. Anyway, I think that most parents...
This is what your daughters are missing when they're homeschooled.
Right. Oh, I got to get them in there so quickly.
You're going to homeschool your daughter, and they're going to be weird.
I hope so.
Yeah, amen.
I hope so. In this culture, yes. That's what I want. No, what I was trying to say is many parents assume that education is primarily about... He's doing it again. He's doing it again.
No, there's this meme that says, your kids are homeschooled and they're not going to fit into regular society. And the other person's like, correct.
Yes. Can I go now, you think?
I'll let you know in a couple seconds.
Okay. All right. I was saying many parents assume education is primarily about academic achievement, or even, here's the other thing, career preparation, right? It used to be that you were educating and forming the mind. Now everybody's just thinking about a job. I got to get an education to get a certain type of job. And so what happens is you lose the fully developed mind because you're trying to go down this one track. And here's the one that bothers me the most: socialization.
So intelligence, when we talk about intelligence, it's not just
EQ and IQ, right?
Well,
emotional intelligence.
You have emotional intelligence, you have mechanical intelligence, and then you have general academic intelligence or book intelligence. And so a fully functioning member of society is going to develop their social intelligence. They're also going to develop, their mechanical intelligence. And what I've discovered is, like, we've had a few motorheads in our school over the year that barely make it through our Christian education because it's harder than public, but they can rip an engine apart, tell you everything there is, put it back together, and I can't do that.
Right.
So there's different types of intelligences, but I do think we make a mistake, first of all, when we remove mechanical intelligence. We've removed that from all education.
Right.
And social intelligence is important, but I don't think stuffing your kids in with a bunch of other children
Correct.
who are just as foolish as they are is necessarily developing social intelligence.
Well, first of all, nowhere in society is it actually that way where you're just with people that are exactly in the same spot as you are, right? I mean, so inevitably you have people below you. I said below and I went above and below in intelligence, but also in status and in age and in like various different things. So you need to be able to converse with all types of people. And so I think that there's something to be said for integrating the education some.
Yeah, I do think.
And our school does that. I mean, you have classes with different ages.
I think it is good for children to socialize with peers, but I think it's bad for that to be the standard of developing their social intelligence. They have to know how to dwell with people in their same age group, who their peers are.
Correct.
That's something that has to follow them into adulthood.
Right.
But they need to see it more. Honestly, the healthiest way for your boys to see social intelligence is for your young boys to hang out with your godly man friends when you're hanging out together, to work together. And I think the same thing's probably true for women as well, young girls, to see older women converse and how they handle themselves.
Titus 2 model.
Titus 2 model,
Yeah. Here's the other thing that I think gets lost. We have this idea that education is almost like a subjects as opposed to generational faithfulness. So when you read, the Deuteronomy verses there, I didn't hear math. I didn't hear science. I didn't hear social studies. I didn't hear that. So like, is education only the subjects that is taught in school, or is it a full worldview?
If you develop the passions, why do you learn English? Why do you study sciences? And if you understand, like, we talk a lot about like John Newton and the apple, and which probably didn't happen. Isaac Newton. I'm sorry.
Yeah, John Locke.
Isaac Newton. But most people don't realize Isaac Newton wrote as much theology as he did mathematics.
Yeah.
And
he was also not a socialized person at all because he was super awkward.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those great minds
a lot of those science people are.
Yeah.
But
Austin.
I'm not a science person.
You're just awkward. I think that's what he was.
A lot of these great minds, the reason why all these things developed is because a believer of a God who set things in order. And if, in fact, Romans 1 is true, and that creation itself tells us about the divine nature of God, then to know more about his creation, the order of things and how things work, is to better understand God. And that's part of natural theology. Now, that's not divine revelation. We have to divide between divine revelation and general revelation. But general revelation does tell us that there's an order to the universe, and that there's purpose, and that there's beauty in communication. The fact that everything we see is a word spoken by God should drive us to be authors of great words and beautiful prose. And so if you aim the passions at God, then there's room for all these things, but it's not about the subjects. It's about the subject of the one who made it all.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking the telos, right? The purpose. What is the purpose of education?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I also think that, mankind is told to seek dominion.
Right.
And part of the way we have dominion is to understand the world in which God has put us in. What is one of the things that Adam initially did was that he gave names to the animals. Now, how you do that? Well, you've got to be able to study the animals. You've got to categorize them.
Yeah.
You've got to provide terms for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of our taking dominion needs to be to understand the world. So we do need to have a grasp of science and how the world works. Mm-hmm. We do need to understand the past and what has come before us, what brought us into the world that we live in now, what mistakes were made, what good things were there, so that we can then take all of that and move in a forward direction. Math, of course, is kind of built into the universe. You kind of can't categorize things and do so many different things without math.
Right.
And also was just talking about language and words and that God gave us the ability to have language. So I think education includes all of the subjects, like you said.
Right.
However, when we only consider those subjects,
Yep.
when that's all education is, I think we are creating a big problem, because as those verses teaching about God,
Yep.
making sure everything, all those other things have a biblical worldview.
All those other subjects point to him anyway.
And also, when you look at the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, wisdom and understanding the world and seeing it correctly and knowing how to make decisions, that's all should be a part of education as well.
Yep. No, you're exactly right. One of the things that I was thinking is that, we talked about, gosh, I don't know, was it this one or not? The Ordo Amoris. Did we talk about that yet?
Yeah.
On here?
I think
Did we have an episode on that? Or was that on the other one?
I think that was on the
other one. Okay. So we need to come back to that one. But when you have a right education, it includes the order of loves, right? It teaches you to love the right things in the right order, and it teaches you to hate the right things in the right order. And so ultimately, if a household abdicates this formation, then this is where I want to hear your guys' opinion. The church inherits the fallout.
I would say the church and the nation.
Ooh, right. Okay. So talk to me about that. I mean, you're on the administration side. Do you ever see that where a family comes to you and says, our kid's having trouble in this public school. They've adopted all these ideologies, and now we don't know what to do. We really want them.
What happens is, and Robbie actually sees a lot more of this than I do because he has high schoolers. We have a kid who's been public schooled his entire life. His parents claim to be Christians, but they're nominal Christians. So they might even be faithful. By the way, you can be a faithful Sunday morning attender and be a nominal Christian. All right. So you have faithful Sunday morning.
Define what that is.
Nominal. They get dressed in the fancy clothes on Sunday, but Monday through Friday, the Bible's not broken open in their house. There is no prayer. There's no speaking. Deuteronomy says, when you rise up, when you lie down, God is not the center of their life.
Right.
And I would dare to say most of them, their marriages are not preaching the gospel either.
Yeah. Okay. So if you stepped in their home, it looks like every other home.
It looks like a secular
home. They show
home.
up on Sunday morning.
And then they have a holy day and they have a duality to their life. True Christianity does not have a duality. You are who you are at all times.
So a nominal Christian would be in name only.
In name only. And they might be genuinely Christians.
Because nominal comes
but they're
from
not,
the word nomen in Latin.
No name.
No, only in name.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's good. We'll always have that Latin guy.
That was for Charles. I need Charles to listen to this one episode so he can hear it.
When I said that, BD here, he got so excited.
Yeah,
he just got this big smile on his face. He's like, I can use Latin in this podcast.
It's the only opportunity I've had. But
again, good education shapes passions and loves. And you said that. So if you're shaping passion and loves and you're shaping it properly, you're shaping them in the proper orders.
And that's why I do kind of like the system we have in like elementary and high school in our country, because not just specifically the public school, I'm just talking about in general, where we give people a little bit of everything. And that allows people to have a basic education as they go into life, but also it helps them discover what interests them.
Well, and honestly,
if they get fed all of it, they can figure out what interests them. I feel like most people, I didn't, when I got out of high school, I was looking for the job that was going to make me the most money. It wasn't really ever like I was taught to.
And sitting at this table, who has the most money?
Yeah. It's not me.
It's not me either.
But again, says the two guys that went into education and ministry. Yeah. I mean, I could be working at McDonald's and possibly make more.
Possibly, yes.
But anyway, that's not the only reason that we do jobs, right? Is to make money. But the whole point is, like, I do, to your point, I wish that we focused even more broadly than we do in education, like growing informing our students.
Well, have you ever read old curriculum and expectations from like the 1920s?
Yeah.
Like these kids were learning philosophy
early.
early.
Yeah.
Philosophy, Greek, Latin, they were taught true etymology, true breaking down of words and where the words come from. They were really educated.
Yeah.
And because of that, by the time they would get on through to the latter part of their education, they were more into rhetoric, debating, developing, writing, researching. We can barely get our kids to research now by the time they get to their junior, senior year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not the same education.
And researching is easier than it was then.
Right. That should, yeah, exactly. That's a great point.
Soul.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going back for your master's right now with
I know.
ChatGPT?
I know. Yeah. Well, and they probably have so many things. It might as well. Honestly, it's probably easier to pull up an encyclopedia and do it the right way now, because I think the schools have so many of these tools to like detect that.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't think so?
There's
I mean, if you guys have it at a lower level.
I was getting ready to say the answer to that, but as an educator, I don't want to say it out loud.
Okay.
But I will tell you that people have developed AI that rewrites AI so that it's called a natural. It's called a naturalizer.
Right.
So
AI that beats the AI at detecting AI.
And so they're constantly have to update things.
Yeah.
But
you could use AI in a good way, though, as almost like a research assistant.
if it's your research buddy, it is. We have more information and easier way to organize stuff at our fingertips.
We did that. We did that for this podcast.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's talk about what we want to talk about. Let's think about the different research that we want to do. Now, we're not great at it.
No, and we're certainly not experts in every field. But like when we put the podcast together, we go, let's do our research, let's study, let's do our homework, just like you do if you're doing a sermon.
Recording, right?
Yep,
like
we use it for the recording, editing, getting rid of
there's a place for it. But I think your point was that they're supposed to be learning how to do the research part way earlier, and in high school they should be doing the rhetoric and forming the debating and the discussing of.
That's where they should
theories,
be,
right? And
in fact,
so they're a couple years behind.
So it's interesting. So. And Doug Wilson, I mentioned him a lot when we talked about education because he published some of the best books on education.
He's the one that brought
Christian classic education back. He revived it. But he actually and it's in his book Recovering the Lost Tools of Learning. In the first 3 chapters, he talks about early American education, the fact that the percentage of people who read at a 12th grade level was actually higher in the 1920s than it is now. He actually lays out all the statistics. And then he says something that's kind of shocking. And he actually quotes and he references all the stuff. In an education on pedagogy, so a book to teachers on how to teach, it directed teachers back then that a good teacher is judged by their ability to take a student with natural gifting and take them to their furthest potential.
Okay.
And so that's how education used to be.
Right.
Now, teachers are told that they're judged by their ability to take the worst student in their class and get them through the curriculum. So at one point in history, teachers were encouraged to take the most gifted kids, inspire them to make them greater. Now you're not allowed to say alter. What's the word that you're supposed to use in education? I forget. You help the kid. It's not really altering the education, but modifications. No, that's not the word either. That's not important. Either way,
it sounds like equity is what you're saying. You're trying to get the lowest person.
So here's what happens: is your naturally gifted kid never reaches their potential,
and they get bored. Right?
They end up being these 4.0 students, and everybody goes, "Oh, you're so smart." And then you compare them against the 4.0 students of the previous generations. Yeah. And by the way, there was no 4.0. There was no grade average like that, because all if you read and look at old report cards, the teacher would write, "This is what the student has mastered." He is
truly
this
mastery
level.
based.
And that's how report cards used to be a report from the teacher on what the student has actually mastered and whether it's up to their expectation. Now we've created such a low standard so that and this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean this to be mean, we want the dumbest kid in the class to be able to pass.
And if you're a teacher and you have a sizable amount of people that are not doing well, like you'll hear about it. You know, you are expected to make sure that everybody passes.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't really know. Your grandparents, did they all finish high school?
No.
Neither did mine. But see, back then the concept was well, you're not smart enough to finish high school. You got an 8th grade education, go
Right.
work in the coal mine.
Right.
And then the government came along in all of its wisdom and said, no, everybody has to have a 12th grade education and learn pre-algebra, or algebra and geometry, even though the majority of you will never use it.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of the kids who can actually learn algebra learning algebra, they end up lowering the standards, and these kids don't learn what the previous generations learned.
There's actually, I can't remember what country it is. It's in Europe. I want to say it might be one of the Scandinavian countries where they basically, once you get to 10th grade, they basically say, okay, you can keep on the normal track and because you're looking to go to college. But if you want to get a job and only come to school 2 to 3 days a week, you can do that. And what they're trying to do is find people the calling, the path that they're going to be on, and help them achieve that, rather than force everybody in a class that they do not
and
value.
So, like, I end up meeting with a lot of the juniors and seniors, and I always ask them, what do you want to do when you graduate high school?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think college and university is for everybody, especially
Right.
nowadays. It's been so, and this is coming from a man, all three of us at college educated,
Yep.
but it literally means nothing nowadays.
Yeah.
So what career do you want to do? Does that career require education? Then go get it. If that career doesn't require education, go start learning from men doing the path that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But while you're young, seek to do something that you would enjoy doing, that you can honor God in.
Try not to get in trouble here by saying this, but
Wait, you're trying not to get in trouble?
I'm trying not to. I think part of it is a result of us sort of being allergic to having a ruling class. In previous societies, there were people who were set aside like from the time they were born, and they were educated, all the way down, because there was an expectation. You're part of the ruling class. You got to be knowledgeable. And then other people didn't have those same abilities. And I'm not saying that we should have that. I'm not trying to say we did some sort of
No.
caste system, but not everybody, what I'm trying to get at is not everybody is going to be the deepest theologian or the, doctor of, and we should be okay with everybody not being a college graduate. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
it's kind of weird that we expect everybody to have
exactly what you're saying, because and this, again, this will make a lot of people mad, and maybe we should do a podcast on this in the future. But the biblical order of creation and men in general has always been that the learned men led the unlearned men. And that's a normal, that's not a caste system, because you have men like Lincoln who comes along and becomes a self-educated man and moves up, So it's a natural gifting on whether the men develop it or not.
Yeah.
But it's not a caste system. It's saying men
it
with
sort
natural
of
gifting.
can create one.
It can,
and that's where I'm saying, like, I want to be careful, because if I'm not careful, I'll be like, you have to define it, and I don't want to define it.
Define caste system.
Yeah.
No, but I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that different people have different callings on their life.
Right.
And so if it makes sense in your calling to go to college.
But what if they don't know what their calling is? Right? Like, I mean, look at an 18-year-old today.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue what a calling is.
Well, part of that might be because nobody's really sat down and talked to them about it. I mean, they might just say, your job is to make a lot of money. Figure out.
The
That is
problem,
what we say.
the
That is what
problem
we
is,
say.
is with the phrase teenager.
Mm.
That's a brand new invention, less than 100 years old. And
Which
so,
doesn't sound brand new, but when you consider how long time is, that's
Yeah, that's
very,
fair.
very
Fair.
new.
And so, like, you look at my wife's grandma, married at 14, started having kids. And I'm not saying we need to necessarily go back to those days. But what I'm saying is that we have prized education so much that we've actually lowered the standards, degraded the education to where there's no value in an actual high school diploma anymore.
I do think that part of it, though, is that, I mean, a lot of people do come from homes that do not value education.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because, we're talking about, like, post-high school. Like, do I go to a trade school? Do I join
Everybody
business
has to
and
pretty
work?
much go to high school now.
And so the issue, though, sometimes, though, is, people should have, I think, a basic certain amount of education.
I agree.
And it's very hard, speaking as a teacher myself who works with primarily high schoolers, but I've worked with middle schoolers before, is, human beings do have a tendency, we're sinners. So it is not odd for younger people to have a tendency to be lazy, both physically and intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get a lot of people past that, it's good to come from a home. If you're at a school and you're trying to teach kids, it's better when they have someone not just at school but at home and saying, "Hey, an education's important.
Yeah,
you need to learn these things. You want to grow up and make money and be able to take care of yourself and your family, and you want to be a blessing to others. But there's also a value in seeking all types of callings, and you want to know as much about this world that we can, and find ways to keep learning and keep growing. That may involve college. It may not.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I like that. And going back to education being about developing passions, the common education system today is not boy friendly. We talked about that.
Right.
And I was one of those boys. I was a C student, elementary, junior high. Like, I hated school. I hated education. And it wasn't until I got a passion about a calling on my life that I started reading. And all of a sudden it's like, I actually like this. And I started growing. And now I look back, I had to learn a lot of things that I chose not to learn when it was right in front of me. And I think we've all went, man, I wish I'd have paid better attention.
I can't tell you how many people that have told me, man, I hated history.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager. But now I really find it interesting.
I'm
I
one
wish
of those.
I'd paid more attention to
one of those. And now it's like one of the things I want to study all the time. But then I was like, why do I care about this date? I don't care.
Part of that too, though, is, in fairness to students that didn't learn it, we have a lot of history teachers that really just don't do a good job of making it. Like I had one teacher that our class was, this student, you read a paragraph in the textbook.
Yep.
Person behind them, you read the next paragraph. It was boring.
It was dry.
And so if we're teaching history or any subject for that matter in a way that's almost destined to make everybody in the room hate it, then we have a problem. And what that probably means is we have some people being teachers who that's not really their calling. And why anybody would be a teacher that isn't called to it, I have no idea why they would do that to themselves. But we probably have some people who probably should not be in that position.
Well, and again, passions. Great teachers direct passions towards those things that they have passion. You are very passionate about history and Bible, and I love sneaking in the back of your classes every now and then. You're a good teacher, and I'm glad you've taught all my kids. But there's a lot of people who do it for a paycheck. That's another thing. You hear this all the time. Teachers are the most underpaid people. I absolutely agree. They are underpaid. They should be paid more. But more money does not equate to better teachers. It equates to people saying, oh, there's a good career I can be paid well in.
It's also and I don't mean this to be offensive at all, so please don't take it that way. It's also one of the lowest levels that so when you're going to college and you're talking to the counselors and everything like that, the lowest level of work you have to do is sociology. Education is one of them right there, And so if you don't really know what you want to do, but you're like, I know I like kids, and, I can go get this education degree. And so you have a lot of people who get a degree and they're like, and they get there and they're like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Well, and you have passion and you have calling too, because we had a gentleman a couple years ago. I swear he was in the CIA. That's another story. For Anyways, seriously.
Yeah.
Am I joking about that, Robbie?
In case the CIA...
I'm not going to say.
I completely disagree.
We're in the basement, so they can't hear.
The man went to an Ivy League college, was an actuarian.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So math. Him and another one of our old teachers, came up with some equation about figuring out how much it's going to rain in 3 days and this and that. And I'm sitting there looking at pages and pages of math, and they're figuring out, debating over the answer. And I'm sitting there going, how? And they're like, well, this, and they're speaking over my head. The one brother was a gifted teacher, and he was a mathematician, and my daughter tutored underneath him, and her SAT scores went up 8 points in math.
Yeah.
Excellent math teacher. The other guy loved math and would be like, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy.
It's easy,
Why is this so hard for you?
It's black and white
and
for me.
And he's super passionate about math.
Yeah.
But he did not know how to bring it down for the young kids
and that can be a challenge. Yeah.
So there's a passion and there's a calling that have to be together with education. There really is.
But to those at home, instill as much as you can the importance in your children about how important education really is, so that they're not just sitting there and they're just in kid prison.
Kid prison?
That's a good, that feels right some days. All right, so do we have
he's
time?
a warden, basically.
I bet he feels that way sometimes too.
Yeah.
Do we have time to walk down Christian paideia?
Ooh.
Do we want to talk about that?
That could be a whole nother podcast.
Okay. So maybe I try to summarize it this way. Let me think. So there are really, first of all, if you've never heard of the word paideia, I would tell you to go grab a book. It's called Battle for the American Mind. Is it The Battle? Either way, it's by Pete Hegseth and the guy that's over the Classical Christian School. Anyway, it's called Battle for the American Mind. And they talk about Western Christian paideia. And the whole point is that we need to redevelop a Western Christian paideia. And that word comes from Greece. But one of the things that they talk about is that there are really three pillars of Western education. The first is Greece. And so think of, Greek culture. We get
that
a lot
musical?
Spelled slightly differently.
Okay.
Greece as in the country. And so we get a lot of our development as a nation from Greece. And so they contributed, one of the things that in their culture that was really valuable was strength and intelligence. And then in Rome, they were very big on order and piety. And then the third leg there, if you will, or the third pillar would be Jerusalem. And that's, faith and obedience. And so if you really want to break that down into a deep way of thinking, it sort of encapsulates like the holistic development of the individual. So mind, body, spirit, essentially. And so maybe that's something we look at on another podcast.
That we did a series of podcasts on the Western paideia.
We talked about it
because we dealt with piety. This was doing a while. I mean, the whole concept of Rome's piety is their coin literally had the young son carrying the father on their back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, this is what the end goal of a man's life, that he would raise sons who would carry him when he needed to be carried.
Mm-hmm.
The concept is you carried him and now he's carrying you. Mm-hmm. That's piety. And that was baked into the culture. And our culture has now been defined by, rap.
Yeah, sure.
WAP, that song from a couple years ago when they were getting mad about the Christmas song, It's Cold Outside,
Oh, right.
It's everything that we've lost piety as a culture.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, paideia is just the ancient idea that education shapes the whole person. Mm. So mind, character, loves, loyalties. And so a Western Christian paideia is the historic synthesis of classical learning and Christian theology that once formed children not just to think clearly, but to live rightly.
David Goodwin,
yeah. Yep.
I've actually, when I've taught like American and world history too, I've often said that, and this kind of goes with the thing you said, is that the United States was built by 4 cities.
Mm. Okay, you gave it 4.
Yeah, you mentioned 3. So Athens.
Yeah, Athens.
That'd be Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rome.
Italy. Yep.
Jerusalem.
Israel.
And then London.
Oh, yeah.
I would say the traditions and institutions.
That's interesting. London. That's a good one.
Yeah. Which is almost a little bit duplicative because London was built by Rome and Greece too.
That's true. But they like, if I actually think that just like American history is required pretty much across the board of everybody. Yep. I actually think British history should also be required because that is our history until 1776.
Which we just talked about doesn't matter.
Nothing before 1776 matters.
Yeah. So ultimately, if you think of it with that framework like you're talking about there, Robbie, which I appreciate the extra emphasis on it, education was never neutral. It was assumed that there was a moral order, that there was a created world. There's objective truth, and human dignity is grounded in the image of God.
And in the words of Vodi Bakum, because we cannot talk about education without quoting Vodi, you can't send your children to Caesar to be educated and not expect them to come back Romans. And that's really, did I say it wrong?
No, I was just,
right.
we
You
were
said it
just
right.
using Rome as like something to like look at as
Look
a
at,
positive way.
yeah.
And then here's this quote about we
That's
we
true.
don't send them to Caesars; they
Yeah,
might be Roman.
There
Yeah.
are good things that you can grasp from Rome. Not all of Rome was good. Not all of Greece was good. Not all of Jerusalem is
Not
good.
all of Athens, no.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
If you or your business share our mission, if you're building something faithful in this age of decay, we'd love to partner with you. Whether it's an episode or a full season, you can reach out to us at altarsandashes@dustandglorymedia.com. That's altarsandashes@dustandglorymedia.com. So thank you for listening to Altars and Ashes podcast. Stand firm, build faithfully, and let your household and your church burn bright as altars to the King.